In 2018, a small company called Basecamp launched a new email app called Hey. It was designed to reinvent email, boasting features like a screener to block unwanted senders and the ability to easily attach large files. For a monthly subscription of $12, users would get an ad-free, privacy-focused experience. Basecamp had built a loyal following over 2 decades, and Hey quickly garnered attention, with thousands signing up for early access. They built it for the web, for Android, and of course, for Apple's iPhone, the device in the hands of more than 135 million Americans. But when Basecamp submitted their iPhone app to Apple for review, it was rejected. Not because it was buggy, or slow, or malicious. It was rejected because Hey chose not to give Apple a 30% cut of its subscription revenue. Apple demanded its share, even though the subscription was sold directly on Hey's own website, not through Apple's App Store. The tech giant claimed Basecamp was violating a core rule. Any digital service offered within an app must use Apple's payment system, which then automatically levies a 30% commission. Basecamp, a company that had spent years innovating, was suddenly told they couldn't even exist on the world's most popular smartphone unless they handed over nearly a third of their earnings for every single user. It was a stark reminder that on the iPhone, Apple isn't just a hardware maker, it's a landlord, a gatekeeper, and the ultimate arbiter of who gets to play and who pays. This wasn't an isolated incident. Across the globe, developers, regulators, and even former allies are now challenging Apple's iron grip on its digital marketplace. What started as a revolutionary platform for creativity and commerce has quietly evolved into a commercial fortress, generating billions in revenue for Apple, while stifling competition and siphoning profits from countless businesses. I dug through the numbers, the lawsuits, and the strategic shifts so you don't have to. What emerges is a story of how a company, once lauded for its innovation, built the most formidable, and some would say ruthless tech monopoly of our time. It's a story told through 3 strategic layers: the invention of the App Store, the enforcement of its platform tax, and the relentless expansion of its ecosystem. To understand how Apple built this empire, we have to go back to January 2007. Steve Jobs stood on stage and unveiled the iPhone, a device he famously called 3 revolutionary products in one: an iPod, a phone, and an internet communicator. Crucially, Jobs initially envisioned a closed system. Third-party developers couldn't build native apps. Instead, he wanted them to create web-based applications that would run in the Safari browser. The idea was to maintain tight control over the user experience and security. This was a defensive strategy, aimed at protecting the iPhone from the fragmentation and malware that plagued other smartphone platforms. But the market, and Apple's own engineers, had other ideas. Just a year later, in March 2008, Jobs reversed course. He announced the App Store, a centralized marketplace for third-party applications. This was a seismic shift. Developers could now build native apps, tapping into the iPhone's powerful hardware and software. It was presented as a boon for everyone. Developers gained unprecedented access to millions of users, and consumers got a universe of new tools and entertainment. Apple, in turn, took a 30% commission on all paid apps and in-app purchases. At the time, this seemed like a fair trade. Apple provided the platform, the billing infrastructure, and the massive audience. The App Store launched with just 500 apps. By the end of its first year, it had over 50,000, and by 2010, it boasted more than 300,000. It wasn't just a store, it was a gold rush. This 30% commission, often called the Apple tax or platform tax, became the bedrock of Apple's services revenue. It wasn't an arbitrary number. Apple argued it covered the costs of running the App Store, processing payments, hosting apps, and marketing. For smaller developers, it was a simple way to reach users without building their own complex payment and distribution systems. But as the iPhone's market share exploded, and the App Store became the primary gateway to mobile software, that 30% began to feel less like a service fee and more like an unavoidable toll. Fast forward to today, and the App Store generates staggering sums. In 2023 alone, Apple's services division, which includes the App Store, Apple Music, iCloud, and Apple Pay, pulled in over $85 billion in revenue. This is more than the entire revenue of major companies like Starbucks or McDonald's. A significant portion of that, estimated to be in the tens of billions, comes directly from App Store commissions. It's a revenue stream so powerful that it acts as a commercial fort, shielding Apple's overall profitability and helping it achieve a market capitalization that has, at times, surpassed $3 trillion. The iPhone created the ecosystem, but the App Store monetized it into a colossal cash machine. But for many developers, this cash machine feels like a trap. Companies like Spotify, the music streaming giant, have long argued that Apple's rules put them at an unfair disadvantage. Spotify offers its premium subscription for $10.99 a month. If a user subscribes through Apple's App Store, Spotify has to pay Apple 30%, or about $3.30 for every month of that subscription. To avoid this, Spotify stopped allowing in-app subscriptions on iOS entirely, forcing users to subscribe through its website. This creates friction, making it harder for Spotify to acquire new subscribers on Apple devices. Apple, meanwhile, offers its own competing music service, Apple Music, which doesn't pay any such commission. This is the core of the monopoly accusation. Apple controls the platform, competes on it, and simultaneously extracts a hefty fee from its competitors. The battle over the App Store's 30% commission escalated dramatically in August 2020, when Epic Games, the developer behind the wildly popular game Fortnite, decided to openly challenge Apple. Fortnite had been downloaded hundreds of millions of times, generating billions in revenue. Epic introduced its own direct payment system within the Fortnite app, bypassing Apple's payment processing. Apple immediately removed Fortnite from the App Store, citing a violation of its rules. Epic responded by filing a lawsuit, accusing Apple of operating an illegal monopoly. The lawsuit, which went to trial in 2021, laid bare the mechanics of Apple's control. Epic argued that Apple's $2 billion iPhone business relies on the App Store's restrictive rules, which force developers to use its payment system and pay the 30% cut. Apple, in its defense, maintained that its rules were necessary for security, privacy, and to ensure a consistent, high-quality user experience. The court ultimately ruled that Apple was not a monopoly in the overall gaming market, but did find that Apple's anti-steering provisions, which prevented developers from telling users about cheaper payment options outside the App Store, were anti-competitive. While Apple wasn't forced to allow third-party payment systems, it was ordered to allow developers to link to external payment options. The legal fight continues, but the Epic lawsuit brought the quiet monopoly into the global spotlight. Apple's defense has consistently centered on the concept of the walled garden. They argue that their integrated ecosystem, where hardware and software are tightly controlled, provides a superior and more secure experience for users. The review process, the single payment system, and the strict guidelines, they claim, protect users from malware, scams, and privacy breaches. This narrative resonates with many consumers who value the reliability and ease of use of Apple products. For years, this defense largely worked, allowing Apple to maintain its 30% commission and its tight control without significant regulatory pushback in the United States. However, the financial incentives for Apple are undeniable. The services division is now Apple's second-largest revenue segment, after the iPhone itself. In the fiscal year 2023, the services division brought in over $85 billion, representing almost a quarter of Apple's total revenue of $383 billion. More importantly, the services segment often carries higher profit margins than hardware sales. As iPhone sales growth has matured, the predictable, recurring revenue from services has become crucial for Apple's continued expansion and valuation. This quiet shift from primarily a hardware company to a services powerhouse is how Apple fortified its commercial position, turning user loyalty into recurring income. The tide of regulatory scrutiny, however, is turning. In the United States, the Department of Justice filed a sweeping antitrust lawsuit against Apple in March 2024. The lawsuit alleges that Apple has illegally maintained its iPhone monopoly by making it harder for consumers to switch smartphones and by stifling competition in various markets, including super apps, cloud streaming games, and digital wallets. The DOJ specifically points to Apple's restrictions on third-party messaging apps, its control over payment systems, and its policies that make it difficult for other companies to develop competing technologies on its platform. This marks the most significant legal challenge to Apple's business practices in America to date. Across the Atlantic, the European Union has already taken decisive action. The Digital Markets Act, or DMA, which went into full effect in March 2024, designates Apple as a gatekeeper and imposes strict rules designed to open up its ecosystem. Under the DMA, Apple must allow third-party app stores on iPhones, permit developers to use alternative payment systems, and let users choose their default browser and search engine. This legislation directly targets the very mechanisms Apple has used to build and maintain its quiet monopoly, forcing the company to fundamentally alter how it operates in one of its largest markets. The quiet part of Apple's monopoly lies in how seamlessly it integrated its services and hardware, creating a self-reinforcing ecosystem that is incredibly difficult to leave. Think about iMessage, for example. The blue bubbles versus green bubbles phenomenon creates social pressure, especially among younger users, to own an iPhone. Or consider AirPods, which pair effortlessly with iPhones, providing a superior user experience compared to connecting them to an Android device. iCloud, Apple Pay, Apple Watch, each product and service is designed to work best, or only, within the Apple universe, effectively locking users in. This strategic intertwining ensures that once you're in, the cost and inconvenience of switching become a formidable barrier. Apple's journey from a hardware pioneer to an ecosystem gatekeeper is a masterclass in commercial fortification. What began as a visionary platform, offering an unparalleled user experience and a vibrant marketplace for developers, has quietly evolved into a dominant force, extracting a significant toll from businesses and, by extension, consumers. The 30% commission, the stringent App Store rules, and the deeply integrated ecosystem all work in concert to protect Apple's profits and market dominance. This empire, built brick by digital brick over 15 years, now faces its greatest challenge. The question is no longer whether Apple has a monopoly, but what the world will do about it. Subscribe to Margin, and the next video is waiting for you on screen right now.